American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and Cartoon Network is recognizing amazing kids who learn from their elders to pave their future. We are honoring the special bond between kids and their grandparents as they are drawn to ancestry.
Hi.
Chambripsu.
Assalamu alaikum.
Ni hao.
안녕하세요.
Hi.
I'm proud to be a first-generation Filipino-American.
I'm proud to be Indian, Kashmiri, and have pilgrim roots.
I'm Cambodian and Vietnamese.
And I'm proud to be Asian American.
One thing that unifies all of us in the Asian American community is that we all respect our elders, have our own respective holidays, and all care for each other. My grandparents taught me a lot about clothing, and my grandma taught me a ton of songs. My nanny taught me that you have to do everything to the fullest because that's what she did, and that made everyone feel really good. They love me and my cousins in a way I don't think anyone else loves like. Her laugh was just the best.
I was born in the province of Chongqing, China. My Chinese name is Su Shuang, and it means strong and beautiful. My grandparents and my parents, when they went to adopt me, got 18 gifts, and each year they'll give me a gift from China. It is hard sometimes to try to fit in or feel like you belong. So in high school, I'm in diversity club, and it's really cool because in a predominantly white school, it's nice to feel like I'm not alone. The culture and the traditions are so delicate, and there might be a lot that especially elders in the Asian community have to offer. My grandparents and parents taught me to enjoy the moment and to keep my Asian part of myself alive, but also to feel like you can be different and you can try new things and just to live a really happy life being Asian American.
Respecting elders is very important because they have lived longer than you and they might have more intelligence. They teach me so much. Like, I still try to cook some traditional dishes with my grandmother. What amazes me is a lot of people get all this food from restaurants, and we made that when we came from like nothing. My mom told me that my great-grandfather used to make his own chess pieces with his hands. And that really inspires me because I like pottery, I like to write, I like to draw. One thing I would definitely want my grandparents to know is like how much I thank them.
Love you, Ta.
And I love that. I really have a lot of my culture in me that I didn't know I'd have.
Respecting your elders is important in the Filipino culture because they are the leaders of the family. They have all equally gone through the hardships, but they have never given up. They've always worked hard, and they've always had dedication. Something interesting my grandparents have taught me about my culture is that dance and music have brought people together. And after seeing them dancing, I wanted to dance. I thank them and appreciate them for their constant love and support. And I wouldn't be the person I am today without them.
I love you, honey.
Love ya! Love you too.
I stand for love.
I stand for unity.
I stand for respect.
I stand for peace.
Keep searching for what you're drawn to.
Happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Every time I meet somebody new, the question always comes up, where are you from? And I always want to say Minnesota, but you know what they mean.
I was at a bar and someone asked me my name and I said Rachel. And then they said, okay, but like, what's your real name?
Chinese are not the same as Japanese, are not the same as Koreans, are not the same as Filipinos or Thai or, you know, Indians.
And not every single Asian person gets into college. Not every single Asian person goes to a great school. Not every single person has, you know, a great job.
I can still be Japanese American and know that part of myself and know that history. But it's also okay to still identify as like a gangly little suburban kid. And I'm fine with that.
I remember seeing like Wayne's World growing up, and I was like, oh, Tia Carrere, she's Filipino, Hawaiian Filipino. And they're like, no, she's playing Cantonese. And I was like, oh, we don't even get to be ourselves. We don't even get to be who we are. We have to play at something else.
Most times in high school or places like this, you don't really have an outlet where you can talk about these Asian American issues. Even in the workplace, you need Asian American mentors who experience the bamboo ceiling, something that happens in corporate America. So most times if you actually look at it, you'll see that a lot of Asian Americans, for instance, they're in middle management or they're in engineering, but you don't really see them in high CEO roles. And the reason being is oftentimes our culture, for instance, my mom always tells me, don't ask for a raise, keep your head down. When you do your work, your boss will basically, see that you're doing well and he'll give you a raise. But in America, it's not like that. America's the squeakiest wheel gets the oil, right?
People sometimes say that, Nobuko, just forget about Japanese-ness, just open up yourself more and be more expressive and be more upfront and straightforward.
That goes back to the stereotype of no one talks about Asians because Asians don't speak up.
My parents didn't want me to learn the language. They thought that if I were to learn Tagalog at home, that I would have an accent and I would have the struggles that they had because they were shamed for having thick accents when they first immigrated to the US. I think I struggle with it even now, that talking to my parents, I think they do regret those moments of wanting something different for me.
I have 2 younger sisters who are 10 and 8, and I really feel it's my responsibility to help them come to terms with the identity crisis I know they're going through and bridging the gap between the American culture that they deal with at school and the Asian culture they deal with at home.
There is just so much beauty in the distinction and different cultures out there that I think it would be to everyone's advantage to learn more about all the different places we come from.
I love seeing that these communities are asking for representation because it's so important to me. And I think my ownership is getting to be a part of that.
And even celebrate the fact that it's so cool to be different, to have something to offer that someone else may not, and to exchange ideas rather than just try to be the same idea. I think that concept is just, it frees you so much. There's so much freedom in that.
Good morning, Dragons. Today, we're taking some time to honor Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month here at Davis. I love learning about the many cultures that make up our community here in College Place and the Walla Walla Valley. It's powerful to hear the stories that help us understand what life in America has been like from the perspective of others who have walked different paths from our own. I think the most important thing to remember is that everyone has their own story. When we come from certain heritages, we often have a common or a shared story, but not always. And sometimes, no matter what heritage we come from, we find that many of our stories have very similar themes. One such theme is the importance of family. This is a theme you'll see in our book this morning. Today, I'd like to read you a story by Bao Fai. It's called A Different Pond. And it's a story that honors the author's parents and the hard work they endured to help him live a better life. I want to encourage you guys to think about how you might honor your parents or guardians, the adults in your life who work hard so that you might have a bright and exciting future. The time is always right to show them your appreciation. All right, let's check out A Different Pond by Bao Fai, illustrated by Tai Bui. Dad wakes me quietly so Mom can keep sleeping. It'll be the hours before the sun comes up. In the kitchen, the bare bulb is burning. Dad has been up for a while making sandwiches and packing the car. Can I help, I ask? Sure, my dad whispers and hands me the tackle box. The street lights look brighter and the roads aren't so busy before the sun comes up. Dad turns on the heater and tells me stories. A kid at my school said my dad's English sounds like a thick, dirty river. But to me, his English sounds like gentle rain. We stop at the bait store on Lake Street, It always seems to be open. "You're here early today," the bait man says. "I got a second job," my dad explains. "I have to work this morning." "On a Saturday?" the bait man asks. My dad nods. I feel the bag of minnows move. They swim like silver arrows in my hands. It's still dark when we get to the pond. We park the car and climb over the divider between the road and the trees. My dad holds my hand and walks ahead through the tangle and scrub. "Step where I step," he says. I am thinking about what Dad told the bait man. "If you got another job, why do we still have to fish for food?" I ask. "Everything in America costs a lot of money," he explains. I feel calluses on his hand when he squeezes mine. Sometimes a Hmong man is at the pond. He speaks English like my dad and likes to tell funny jokes. Sometimes there's a black man there, too. He shows me his colorful lure collection. This time it's just me and my dad. It is a little bit cold. I rub my hands together, yawn, and look up to see faint stars like freckles. As Dad sets up in a clearing, I gather small, thin twigs for a fire. They need to be dry and clean. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 10 more for later. I put some rocks in a circle and set up the twigs. Like a volcano, Dad reminds me. I set one end of each twig down, the other up, leaning them in so they rest against each other and hold each other up. I get it to light with just one match. Dad nods. "You want to put a minnow on the hook?" Dad asks. I want to help, but I shake my head. No, I don't want to hurt that little fish, even if I know it's about to be eaten by a bigger one. My dad smiles. He isn't upset with me. Dad hands me a sandwich, cold bologna between 2 pieces of bread. "Careful of the spicy stuff," he says. There's half a peppercorn, like a moon split in 2, studded into the meat. I used to fish by a pond like this one day when I was a boy in Vietnam, Dad says, biting into his sandwich. "With your brother?" I ask. He nods, then looks away. Dad tells me about the war, but only sometimes. He and his brother fought side by side. One day, his brother didn't come home. The bobber dips in the dark, and Dad pulls. "Got one," he says, almost shouting. "A crappie," and soon another. "Can I help?" I ask. He nods, and I use 2 hands to help guide the fish into the bucket. The fish feels slimy and rough at the same time. Dad laughs at the funny face I make. Dad smiles, his teeth broken and white in the dark, because we have a few fish, and he knows we will eat tonight. Time to go home. Dad must get ready for work. He washes his hands with a small nub of green and white soap, then I do the same. I look at the trees as we walk back to the car. I wonder what the trees look like at that other pond in the country my dad comes from. By the time we get home, the sunlight coming through the windows is just a faint tint, blue and gray instead of gold. At home, Mom looks tired, but she smiles at the fish in the big white bucket. My dad changes his clothes and gets ready to go to work. He pats me on the back and says to Mom, "Our boy did a good job with the fire today." "You learn so quickly," Mom says. Then she asks me to help with the fish before she has to go to work too. I'm sad that she and Dad must leave, but not too sad. I know that later on they'll both come home. "Look after your baby brother," Mom reminds my brothers and sisters. She means me. Then she gets on her bike and goes to work. I'm not a baby, I think to myself. I helped catch dinner. Tonight, when we are all home, Dad will put rice in the cooker, and Mom will fry the fish on both sides until they are crispy. I will bring out the jar of fish sauce that has flecks of chili pepper and carrots floating on top. At the table, my brothers and sisters will tell funny stories. Mom will ask about their homework. Dad will nod and smile and eat with his eyes half closed. "Good fish," he will say to me. And I will smile and nod. And later, when we sleep, we will dream of fish in faraway ponds. At the end of this book, the author has written a little note, also the illustrator. But we're just going to see what the author had to say today. Here's what he said. He said, "My family came to Minnesota from Vietnam as refugees from war in 1975. I was just a baby when we fled, the youngest of 6. My father was a soldier, but not a high-ranking officer, and my mom had worked at the snack shop at a school in Saigon. We lived in the Phillips neighborhood of South Minneapolis, and we didn't have much of anything. Both my parents worked multiple jobs to survive and support us in a country whose people did not understand why we were here at best and blamed us for the aftermath of the war at worst. My father would sometimes take us fishing with him before the sun came up, but for food, not for sport. That means not for fun. I was much less appreciative of this experience than the little boy in this story. But now that I'm a father myself, I wanted to honor the struggle of my parents. I also want to acknowledge that they sometimes told me difficult stories about the war and where we came from. My parents shared these stories with me not to scare or harm me, but because these things that happened were a part of our lives, and they wanted me to understand. I pass along a version of our story with those same intentions." Thanks for reading with me today, Dragons. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.